Let's talk about off-grid water. How to pressurize your water in your home so that when you turn on the tap, the water comes out a consistent flow. Now, there are some people that decide to do what is called gravity feed. Gravity feed is they put their water tank up on a hill and they allow the water to basically be plumbed. They actually plumb the water from the hilltop, that tank, all the way into their house, and that pressurizes water through gravity. They call it gravity feed. If you don't have a hill like I don't have a hill on my property. It's pretty much flat. There's not enough of a grade to create a gravity feed system. So for people in my situation, we have to use what is called a pressure tank. A pressure tank is a steel tank that brings water. Water is brought into it. It has a diaphragm or bladder in it that expands as the water comes in, and it contracts. And that expand and contract is what maintains the pressure. It actually keeps the pressure pretty much even. It'll go in, it'll have what they call a cutoff, where it's too much pressure, and you have a square D switch that will stop that, and that's in conjunction with your pressure tank. Well, I've got a square D, and what it does is it will turn off at 50 psi, and when the pressure of the house drops to 30 psi, it'll turn back on. And what I mean by turn off and on, it turns the cistern pump on, and the cistern pump will kick on and fill the pressure tank, expanding that bladder up to 50 psi, which basically maintains the home water pressure. Now, there are a whole bunch of theories and ideas on what to do about a pressure tank. Buy big or buy small. But the one thing you need to do is you need to buy the right size. And that's needless to say. You can buy big and you'll be fine if you have a pump that can handle it. You can buy small, but you've got to make sure that all the faucets in your house can maintain the same pressure. You have too many faucets for a small tank, and the pressure will drop as soon as someone brushes their teeth while you're washing dishes, or as soon as someone flushes the toilet while you're in the shower. So these are things you have to consider. Is each faucet in your home, from your laundry machine, toilet, sinks, shower, are all considered faucets. And how many faucets can that little pressure pot hold? Well, the smaller the cabin that you have or house that you build, the smaller the pressure tank can be. Right now in our home, we have a hose bib. We have a sink, kitchen sink. We have a bathroom sink. We have a shower. We have a toilet, and we have a washing machine. So that's 6 faucets. I looked at the diagram on the pressure tank that I bought, and it said it could handle 6 faucets. So I got the 20-gallon pressure tank. I got the minimum. Now, chances are I am not going to run the hose bib very often because I have a secondary pump that I hook onto the cistern for gardening. So I won't be using the hose bib for very many things. Mostly, maybe wash a car here and there. And you can just be, conscious that if someone's in the shower, don't go wash the car. Or I could use the other pump that I have. That's my system. What we did 7 years ago, I have to now rectify a huge mistake I made in our water system, the pressure tank. So now you're getting a person who has been there, who's done that, is now fixing what I've done wrong. I went with the philosophy of buy a bigger tank. Buy the biggest tank that you can fit in the house. And the reason why is I figured, hey, if I can get that pump to kick on, fill that tank, then I'll have time in that tank. That tank will drain until it gets to the right PSI and until it kicks on. So the pump will be on longer, but it won't cycle as often. It will kick on, and then, as soon as the toilet fills up, it won't have to kick on again, but it might kick on when I do the dishes. And it will kick off when I'm not, when I'm done with the dishes or whatever. But we were thinking less cycling of the pump, extend pump life. That's not always the case. And what I found is that the larger pressure tank kept the pump on longer because it had to fill it instead of doing short bursts. I'm hoping that by going with a smaller pressure tank, the short bursts will maintain an even pressure in the house, but it won't work the pump as much. If the pump is working and pushing against that pressure for long periods of time, it's wearing that pump down. So the bigger pressure tank, I think, was a detriment to my cistern pump. So I pulled that out. And the reason I pulled it out is that huge pressure tank, well, one, it became waterlogged. And that means that water got behind the bladder. So you have your tank, you have a bladder in the middle, water comes in, it expands the bladder. The bladder is what basically tells what the pressure is in that tank. Well, water got behind the bladder. So the bladder gave or broke or split or something, or aged or cracked, and now water's up above. And water will not come out through the bladder this way. There's supposed to be no water up here. It's supposed to be air. That's what you call a waterlogged pressure tank. When all this went down, it was the last week of school. I had papers to grade. I had a trip to go to on the weekend. I was traveling that very weekend to a training in Boise. And my water went out Tuesday night. And I'm like, okay, I could throw a pump on it, but something was wrong. I mean, you could hear the hammering, and I'll put a video in here where you can hear the hammering in the walls. There was fighting going on between the cistern and the pressure tank. The pressure tank was not operating correctly.
You want to put her in the bedroom real quick?
Yeah. Okay, you gotta put him back?
Yeah. Let's see if I can get the other one real quick.
Okay, there goes our Buff Orpington rooster.
Oh, here's another one.
And the pressure tank just broke, or the cistern pump just broke. So Tuesday night, water comes down to a trickle. We fill up all our water jugs as fast as we can because we know that we're going to be out of water soon. Wednesday, didn't shower, went into work, and I said to my boss, I said, hey, I need to take off the last 2 days of school. So I got those 2 days off. I drove home, picked up 2 pumps, one for the orchard and one for the cistern. And it was a disaster after disaster after disaster. I had made mistakes. I had thought, I read the labels. I mean, it's not like I go and buy things. I mean, I'm reading the labels and I'm thinking, this can move this much water in this much time. So I bought a submersible pump. And that submersible pump, moves about 4,000 gallons an hour. I mean, that's pretty good. That's a really good moving pump. And so what I decided, hey, I'm going to redo this whole thing. I'm going to take out the line inside the cistern tank that has a foot valve on it. I'm going to put a submersible pump inside the cistern tank. I'm going to pump water up a special pipe. I'm going to rehook everything up. And I'm going to bring the pressure tank. I'm going to get a smaller pressure tank, and I'm going to put it in the pump house in the box where the pump is. That's what I'm going to do. I am going to move the pressure tank out of the home. And that's one move that I was very leery to do moving into northern Idaho because I was afraid that the pressure tank would freeze. And so I purposely designed it to be in the home and plumbed it that way. However, mistakes were made. And one of the mistakes is I was working with a guy, he knew what he was doing, and I knew what I was doing. But off-grid and on-grid are not the same philosophies. So if you get a person who is used to building on-grid systems and doesn't understand off-grid systems, and you put your two minds together, you kind of butt heads a little bit, and he had more experience, so he won out. I mean, I kind of went, maybe you're right. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. But what happened is that he had a great idea, is to pull off 2 lines before it went through my filters. And I totally agree to this. This is a great idea philosophically. You are filtering your cistern water. You're filtering it for impurities, for dirt, sand, whatever. Okay, trying to clean it a little bit so that when you drink it, you're drinking healthy water. That's just a given. You should be filtering your water that you're pulling up from your well. And he said, well, why don't filter your hose bib, because you're using it to wash cars and you're using it to garden. You're not going to be drinking from your hose bib. Bring your bottled water out from the house. I mean, that way you're saving and not taxing your filter system. It's a great idea. The other thing is, why filter your toilet water? That's just going into your toilet. I mean, you're just going to flush it. You're not drinking that. I pulled 2 lines off. So you have the main coming in from the cistern pump, and it's going to the pressure tank. But before it got to the pressure tank, I pulled off those 2 lines, hose bib and toilet. And then I brought it to the pressure tank. So the pressure tank is pressurizing the entire house system all the way back to the cistern pump. So now the cistern pump doesn't have a check valve between it. It is pumping against the pressure tank all the time. And the pressure tank is pushing against the pump when the pump's not running. Okay? So it's kind of pushing it. So when it starts up, it has to start pumping against that. That's not good. It also led to a loud rattle and a water hammer between the toilet and the hose bin. And it would just be boom, 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 boom. So as soon as this water came in from the cistern pump, it would go out to those two lines and then come in to the pressure tank. The pressure tank is backfeeding these two lines over here and trying to pressurize the whole house. And so you get this boom, 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 and it was just 7 years. It was doing that. And I tried to figure out how to do that. I think I did a video where I was the cistern pump. I'll go in and I'll make a flexible line and I'll try and eliminate that. It didn't do, I mean, it helped take the sound down a little bit, but it didn't fix the problem. And so you just have this battling going on. So what I did is I decided, hey, the system has failed. I have a cascade failure. I got a pressure tank that failed. I got a cistern pump that has failed. It is cascade failure time. It is over, game over. I got to do something different. And on the last 2 days of school, I ripped out the cistern, the pressure tank, and I moved it to the pump house. And I got a smaller pressure tank and replumbed the whole thing. I replumbed a new pump into the system. I used a submersible. Everything's working. I got it all set up. I turn on the submersible. The submersible is AC, so I had to rewire from my DC pump to AC. And literally, the water submersible pump came on, started, pressurizing the system, but it could only pressure to 10 psi. That's not enough pressure to take a shower. That's really low flow. That's like terrible. You turn on the faucet, it's like trickle, So I bought the submersible pump that doesn't work for the system. It can't pressurize the system. It just has enough. It can move water, but it can't pressurize that water. It was crazy. I mean, I was totally misled by that. I did not have any clue. So you got to be very careful with what pump you buy. It looks good on the box. It sounds good on the box. You think, hey, that's right. And it wasn't. So now I have a submersible pump that the warranty is voided on because I had to cut the wire to get it to work in my system. Boom. Hey, I'll use it for a fountain later on. I got plans for that. So it won't be a complete loss. So I'm okay, what am I going to do? So I had to drain the cistern tank. I had to crawl in the cistern tank for a second time. That means I'm draining the cistern tank twice. It's a 1,500-gallon cistern tank. So I'm draining it out using a booster pump that I bought for the garden orchard. Just pumping it out as hard as I can get. So I can get a ladder in there, go down, take out the submersible, put the original line with the foot valve on it, and go back to the system it was, and bring the pump back outside of the cistern and put it in the same box as the pressure tank. That was a lot of work. So I had an old DC pump and that was left over. I took it out of the system because it wasn't strong enough. I'm like, hey, maybe this will work. Maybe let's get the job done. I'm going on a trip on Sunday. I've got to get this done. I have 2 days to do it. Let's get this done. I have to grade papers. Let's just put this old pump in. So I put the old pump in. I have to rewire back to DC. So I'm going AC to DC. It runs. It pressurizes the house 30 to 50 psi. Then the pump dies. It didn't have enough to keep going. It was old. It was failing. I thought I had more life in it than it did. It died. I even tested it out. I ran a bucket 20 feet, pump, drained out a bucket, moved it, to another bucket. Didn't have the strength to handle the pressure tank. I'm leaving in 2 days. I have no pumps. Except for the garden pump, which is a Wayne half horsepower booster pump. So I take the Wayne half horsepower booster pump and I put it in the system, plumb it to that, using the same pipe that goes into the cistern as for the DC pump with the foot valve. I rewire back to AC, turn it on, and it works. We're doing great. You got water, it's running. This time, however, I did not wire the panel to be permanently AC. There's no way. This pump takes a lot of power. It takes like 38 amps when the sucker runs. It is a energy drain. In the wintertime, I just couldn't last having that power at my house. I have to go back to DC. It takes less power. You know, you can't, when you have a battery bank and you're relying on a day that is cloudy or your panels get covered with ice and snow, you're going to have to rely on your battery bank and you can't drain it down that fast. No, you can't. So I take off on my trip. The AC pump's running everything. My wife and I are incommunicado. We're talking. And I said, honey, you got to order a new pump. Order a new DC pump. So she orders it on June 10th. It is July 6th. I got the pump July 5th. That is how long it took for me to get this pump because it was back ordered. We've been running on this AC pump ever since. We're doing fine. It's summer. We got plenty of sunshine. We might have a thunderstorm come in, but we're doing fine. You know, because you get 2 hours of sun and it replaces what you've been using. So now today, I have the pump and I'm going to rewire the system back to DC. I'm going to pull out the Wayne half-horse pump. I'm going to move it back to the area that I had for it hooked up to the cistern to be a orchard and garden sprinkler pump. So I'm going to move it back to that. And I got to do this all today. I'm a little nervous because it was so traumatic going through that experience with the pumps. I really don't want to do it. I mean, I now know what I'm doing. I know the system because I've done it 3 times. This will be number 4. And at least I don't have to drain the cistern. But there were times when I was walking out the door and I'm the only person that understands this system. I'm the only one that gets it. If I call a professional in, he's going to just go, what did you do? What's going on? He's not going to understand what I did or the philosophy behind it. Most people work with on-grid systems. They don't understand off-grid systems. And then you have to hear, da, 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 and you're like, hey, I just need. So I just don't call anybody. I'm on my own. I got this. But there gets to be a time when you run out of one ring connector for your pipes and you're driving to town an hour for that one ring connector and you're just really about to melt down because you could try the system if you had one more ring connector out of a bag of 25. Yeah, there were moments. There were moments I got very stressed. There was moments I got very angry. There was moments I just thought I was going to have a complete meltdown. But I didn't. You just can't quit. You just got to keep going. This is my home. I have to keep going. If anyone's going to fix it, it's going to be me. I understand the system. I will say this. The system now, the water system I have, is way better than the other system. Way better. There's no more knocking. You can barely hear the pump when it's on. It's so quiet. Before, you'd hear it come on every time because that pressure tank would be backfeeding it and hitting it and going through the other 2 lines and all that rattle. There's no more backfeeding. Everything is in a single flow. It's great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and rip out the wires for the current cistern pump, the Wayne, and replace it with the Aquatech. And I'm going to rewire it back to DC. I'm going to do all that stuff right now. Now that was a story. A long story. All right. Let's go.